Hi, welcome to Chapter 1, Intro to Sociology. I'm your instructor, Julie Young. So, have you ever watched a reality TV show such as Real Housewives or Survivor or Below Deck? The behavior and the people in that, have you ever wondered, hey, I wonder if I would react that way? Or you say they're in a controlled or confined environment, or those two groups of people always clashed. Well, that is you watching. You're studying their behavior. And that's what we do in sociology. We study the behavior of people and society. We could look at Black Friday. Once they were in-person events, and now you can see that it's shifted more towards online. One of the questions that you may have is, are the people that are attending Black Friday going back and doing sort of their tradition, such as getting up at the 3 a.m. and showing up into the doors at 6 and going with the crowd? Has that stayed their tradition with their family or themselves? Or have they shifted more to online shopping? This is a question a lot of people have. And with sociology, we're able to look at shopping trends, marketing, even the way people behave in those situations. I don't know if you ever remember, but when people used to do only in person, there used to be some police officer there because there could sometimes be tugging and pulling of items. As a sociologist, you'll become a detective, or as sociologists call it, an analyst. You'll be exploring the reasons, actions, and causes. These can be looking at cultures, society, large groups, we call those macro groups, um, baby boomers versus millennials, online communities, even your gaming groups, whether they're online or you're doing working with Pokemon on your days off. Um, we also have individuals and HOAs. Individuals would be those micro groups. Some would say that you can't have people that are more isolated at home being part of a group. But in all honesty, they are participating in society by maybe ordering online and engaging with people that way. Or maybe they're connecting through online groups. That can be part of their engagement and behavior in society. It's your job to prove and to prove. Ask those questions with assumptions or statements. We are to ask and disprove anything with questions. Always ask the who, the when, the where, the how, the why, the what. Investigate, do surveys, make the extra step. Let's give you an example. Let's say you're looking at Disney World as a whole, the population of people that attend. That's a large group, so we're going to call that a macro group. You're looking at maybe you're looking at their poverty versus higher income levels that can attend. Maybe you're looking at certain groups that attend and visit. Maybe you're looking at the time of year. Or maybe you're looking at the alternatives, such as the little kid, you're there, you see this one child, and they are pitching a fit, crying, whatever, and the assumption for many people would be they're just having a tantrum, they're pitching a fit, and they look at them in a negative light. But because you're looking at that individual child, which would be called a micro, you're looking at them. You're going to ask some questions. For example, if it's a little girl in a princess dress. Maybe she thought she wanted to wear it, but after she's been at Disney World for a little bit, the outfit's itchy and hot and uncomfortable, and maybe that's why she's crying. Maybe she didn't get the toy she wanted in the store. What if she was you see her getting off the ride recently. Could that be it? Maybe she was afraid on the ride, or they're asking her to. Maybe it's hot, so you're going to look at the weather in the day, or maybe it's right past lunchtime and there are lines everywhere. Or maybe she just is having a tantrum. But it's your job, instead of just making the assumptions, but to look past that and ask the questions. Recently, as a sociologist, I went back to my hometown after being gone close to 20 years and not visiting. I remember it fondly as a town where we would leave school and go over and walk into town, and it would be fun, and everybody would hang out at the restaurants, even the kids during elementary school. I remember getting along with everyone, and we would have large parades. Just sort of like my thinking was it was an ideal small town. Of course, I wanted to get out and go to a larger town once I got older, but I still remembered it very fondly. When returning the saying they have, you can't go home back home again, that felt very true to me. It felt like things had changed dramatically. There were not as many people out and about. The parade I thought would be there had changed. The people I was engaging with had changed. It almost seemed like I could see the town as it was, but everything going on in it and all my special memories, even as I went to the rec center, it had changed. The library where everybody gathered had changed. And for me, that was devastating. But what I should have done, but I have decided not to yet because I can't take myself out of the picture, is looking to see, have things actually changed, or was it part of my imagination? Social imagination looks at the larger social forces such as race, class, gender, politics, religion, economy. It'll look at those certain situations, such as looking at that hometown and looking at those changes so it can verify, was it always the way I saw it, or had things changed, or was that just a memory that I had? One thing I have noted was the mills that were there have closed. And the mills there were very engaging. They had people working there. They brought wealth to the community. Many of those people have aged since I have been there. Some people have passed away that were the parents of children I knew. So the environment is likely changed, and it could have been part of that economy, and it could have been part of the grouping of the bonds of people that were there. That's something that I could investigate more, but that's known as social imagination. You may not want to answers, you may, but if you don't get them, that's going to leave you in the dark for a while. So you always want to, when you're ready, ask questions and don't make assumptions. Now, you're asked to be in the moment as a sociologist when you're doing a study. But let's say I'm going to do a study of women at a domestic violence shelter. And I get there and I am trying to do research and interviews, but all I can do is think about my sick child at home. Or all I can do while I'm there is thinking, I'm missing work and I really need that money. What am I going to do? Or maybe you're in this class right now and you're thinking, I really don't want to read this book. I can't focus. I can't even do the research paper because I'm doing so poorly in another class. As sociologists, they ask us to leave things at the door, to be in the moment, and that's often hard to do. But they do ask you, if you can, to be present, and that would be known as the paradigm shift, where you can shift out of that stressful situation, take those things that are bringing you down or controlling your mind right then, such as work or finances or kids or school, and be in that moment there. Be focused, get engaged, and hopefully you're going to get very excited in your research that you do. Let's use an example of a theory and see what happens. So the theory is that phones in young children decrease grades. So that's going to be a statement that we have. Sociologists, you're going to either prove or disprove this. You're going to do interviews, you're going to observe, you're going to pull some statistics, you may do some surveys, and you're going to gather some information. Now, maybe you're certain that it's phones that cause children to have decreasing grades. And maybe that's what you're hoping to get as the answer. But what if it's not the phones? Maybe it's their activities, or maybe it's their learning styles. Maybe it's those apps on the phone, so if you took those off, maybe that makes a difference. Maybe they're having sleeping issues. It's important to research and compare to develop your backed up hypothesis. So you want to back up your information. You can't just make a broad statement without doing the research and looking into it, and then you can confidently share that statement and your reasonings why. Make sure to step back and leave your opinions at the door. As a social analyst, we may not always get the answers, or it can be different from what we expected. If we did maybe that study on the young children with the grades, maybe we didn't get all the answers we wanted. Maybe we had a lot more research to do, but we hit a dead end. So that's okay. We can reevaluate it later. We can look into other elements. Maybe we start looking into the apps, or maybe we start looking at how grades are being impacted another way. Maybe we're looking at the wrong age group. It can be different things, but you're not necessarily always going to have to get a right or wrong answer. It's not a check or an X. So there are several theorists that are listed in your book, and I encourage you to read that. That material will be on upcoming assignments and quizzes. The other thing is also when you're in there, look at some of the videos that we have attached here that have some of the theorists. Those are going to connect you and let you see it in more of a watching setting versus just reading. So I have a few of the theorists. Those theorists that you're going to read about, they give us the tools to be sociologists. And one of the first ones you're going to see is Comte. Comte is the one that came up with the concept of sociologist and claimed it. He was looking at the laws of social phenomenon, and he helped look at how social life was controlling us, how it was impacting individuals, and looking at the whole behavior. Spencer, that's a great one. He created the first principles, and he came up with the concept of survivor of the fittest. I know we have heard that with Survivor the show. And so, or you sometimes hear it on, I'm going to be on a deserted island. So what he was saying in that is we adapt over time to the changing conditions. Maybe you were dropped off on a deserted island, and instead of having that nice comfy mattress that you have in your room with your nice down comforter, maybe you're going to adapt and you're going to build one with leaves and cover up with that, and you're going to build a small tent out of wood, whatever it takes, but you're going to develop, and maybe you're changing your shelter or you're eating different things, but you're doing what it is to survive, and you're going to change due to your conditions that you have. Durkheim was great. He looked at the different societies and how they created different bonds and how they were based on some of our tests that we do. So think, for example, elementary school teachers. With elementary school teachers, they have a certain bond related to they're at a school most of their week. They are with elementary school children most of their week, and they're also doing teaching. Um, they are able to talk in the same sense. They know common topics they have to share. So that has developed a bond. You'll sometimes see mothers morning out groups. The moms are all talking after the kids are at mom's morning out, and they develop a connection. And maybe that goes with them over time, and they have that bond there. But what Durkheim also notes is sometimes someone can become disconnected and it develops a weaker bond. So that's known as a nami. An example could be that maybe your child ended up going to a different school and you were connected to all those different parents. But when you see those parents out in public, you don't have that same bond you have. They're still very connected, but your relationship with them has changed and it's weakened. So that is part of that nami. Karl Marx, he was the founder of conflict theory, which is something you're going to learn about in future chapters that's going to be very important. He talked about the social inequality, and he also talked about how we have disagreements and conflicts over goals and values. So maybe we're seeing a conflict in violence and poverty and how that can challenge each other or create one another. So he was big on how life is decided by your position, the iron cage. If you have grown up only being allowed to work in a mill, you've never had the chance of anything else, you've always lived with family that's worked at a mill, you don't have an opportunity to go anywhere else and have other opportunities. It's sort of your environment has made that decision for you. Now, you can break out of that environment, but as he said, that the class status and power, those can really determine where you are. Someone else's status can define what your status is, or someone's power can put you in a certain class. That is going to be it for this chapter. You have 2 more chapters to look at this week. Feel free to email me any questions, or we can schedule a virtual meeting. Please allow me 48 hours to respond to your emails. Assignments are due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. We will have the other chapters open up with the assignments and some of the lectures at that time. Also, so you know, assignments will be graded in 1 week. So make sure to give me that time frame. We do have a rather large class with this group. It's a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.